United WFC.
Good evening and welcome to All for United WFC, the WFC show. Really good show for tonight. We've got our WSL Team of the Year. This is going to be picked by our panelists and also myself. We're going to talk about the German League, so talent over there. Should more WSL clubs look to utilise that market? And we'll also talk a little bit about the TV deal and the impact of that in its first season. So joining me tonight, Connor, how are we?
Yes, sorry, couldn't find the mute button. Couldn't find the unmute button there. Yes, all good, all good.
Good stuff. Gareth as well. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Perfect. And Alina, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. We'll start with our team of the seasons then. Connor, I'm going to put you on the spot and let you go first. So yeah, let's get your team of the season on screen. And I will let you introduce what we have. There we go.
I'm waiting for it to come up here. What's going on?
Has it done it?
It has, but can you zoom in? I can't. I know what it is, but there's no chance of people seeing that unless you've got.
How's that?
There we go. Yeah, I'll go through it very briefly because I think there's a few players in there that I think everyone would have picked. I think that front three speaks for itself. Hemp on one side, Mead on the other, Kerr down the middle. I don't think, unless you're going with Gareth's little format that he's made for this, I don't think you can pick anyone else other than that front three. There was a couple of players I had to have in. Now, the reason why Wrighton is at fullback is because I had to get her in somewhere. I couldn't not put her in. And it was the same with Cuthbert and Honor as well. There was a few players that I just had to fit in, and then the rest of the players I just picked around. So the last player I actually put in this team was Miedemar, because I was trying to find a midfielder to put in the team, but I thought you cannot ignore what Miedemar's done this season either. I think she's on 14 goals, 7 assists or something like that. And she has played a little bit deeper since Stina came in as well. So I thought, slot her in as 10. Like I think I was saying to Alina backstage before we went live, this team probably wouldn't work in real life. If you fielded that, it probably would. The balance, I don't think, is quite there. But in my little game that I've got here, goalkeeper, it was between her or Mary Earps. I've gone for Zinsberg purely because highest clean sheets. But if you actually have a look at like save percentage and things like that, Roebuck and Berger have actually had better seasons, but they've not played the same amount of games. And Greenwood and Carter, defence wins your titles. It was between Carter or Millie Bright. It would have been one of them. I just went for Carter, just purely for it was so tight between those two. And Greenwood, she's had a really good season considering the back four that City have had. It's changed pretty much, especially at the start of the season. It was constantly changing, but she was the standout throughout that. So, and Honor and obviously Ella Toon. I had to get some United girls in there. Honor's just been solid all season. I don't remember her ever making a mistake. She actually generates a lot of our attacks. And Ella Toon, speaks for itself as well. 7 goals, 7 assists. Had a fantastic season. And again, one of the reasons we were in the fight for so long. So, yeah, I don't think there'll be too many complaints for that, I hope. I think there's one or two that people could switch around, but I don't think there's too many.
Was there anyone then that you maybe left out that you probably think? I mean, I know you said it was hard to get them in and obviously get it to an 11. Was there anyone that maybe if you were picking it, either make a bench or that you were sort of close to adding in?
I think maybe the fullbacks, if you put Wrighton in midfield, maybe put Honor at left back and Ashley Neville maybe comes in potentially. That's maybe a shout. Obviously, Little, in the midfield as well. I don't think you could swap anyone in that front three. I think that's nailed on. For everyone with the season they've had. So I think there's probably only really the fullbacks and maybe Mary Earps you can make a case for in goal. But for me, I don't think she's been that level. I think 10 clean sheets I think she finished on. But I think she has made a couple of errors where I don't think the other keepers have this season. So, yeah, there was a couple I said maybe fullbacks. But other than that, I don't think there's many players that get into this side. You could probably look at maybe a couple more of the Chelsea girls. Like I said, Millie Bright maybe alongside Carter, but I didn't want to just fill the team full of Chelsea, so I had to mix it somewhere.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison as well. But Gareth, have you got any thoughts on that? You can either compare it to your team or just maybe speak about individuals.
I mean, the formation. I mean, I think all the players are great players. I probably have gone with Bright over Carter at centre back. Yeah, I respect the shoehorning in players and making a formation to fit your 11 rather than picking an actual football formation, because that's certainly something. But no, in terms of players, like if I was doing this kind of format, I wanted to mix it up a bit, so you'll see mine shortly. But yeah, I think I'd have probably gone with something similar. I think that there's players there that you can't really argue about. I think potentially players like Kim Little could have kind of got in there potentially over Cuthbert, but yeah, no real comments on that. It's a strong-looking team with a suspect formation.
That's the one. Kim Little for Cuthbert, I think, is the one. I think the reason why it's kind of shaped a little bit like that is because you've got your 6 in obviously Cuthbert. I know, like I said, probably wouldn't work real life, soul 6. Ella 2 is kind of your floating 8, and you got Miedemar as a 10. That's kind of how I was looking at it. But like I said at the start, this probably wouldn't work. If you tried to put that together, they'd score a fair few goals, but I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
being very balanced.
I think it's very much a team that I'm going to try and score more goals than you. A lot of 5-3 wins and things like that.
I'm just thinking, could a potential 4-2-4 work? It's suicide, but I'm just looking at it thinking Viv floating there. I don't know where she is in that space. Could be, maybe moves up. I don't know. Alina, what are your thoughts on Connor's team? Obviously, we'll get onto your team next, but what do you make of it overall, apart from the formation?
I mean, it's a solid starting 11. Obviously, there were some standout players this season that you just had to include in every team of the season. I think that's obvious. Like Sam Kerr, obviously, Lauren Ham. Just can't miss out on these players. If we go to my starting 11 soon, there's a few differences that I have in my backline. I can already say that I would have included Millie Bright, obviously, because she stepped up massively for Chelsea. And also another player that I have included is Ashley Neville.
Yep, let's find your team. There we go, and we'll zoom in. And there we go.
A bit better formation wise, but I don't know I don't know either if that would work. Zinsberger in goal is an obvious choice. Having won the Golden Glove and 13 clean sheets is obviously very impressive, and she was very consistent, I'd say, in comparison to other goalkeepers. And as I already said, my backline, a few differences: Millie Bright, and Ashley Neville. I mean, Ashley Neville was massive for Tottenham this season. They reached their highest spot in the league, like ever, the highest placement, and she obviously such a massive role for the team this season. And just Carter, she's developed so great this season. I think after last season, a lot of people said that she wasn't good enough for Chelsea. A lot of people had obviously written her off, but she proved everyone wrong and stepped up massively. And same for Erin Cuthbert, who didn't have a lot of injuries this season, luckily, so she could really show off her talent and show off what she's like. And I just remember I was at the last game of the season, Chelsea against Manchester United, and I remember there was a woman sitting behind me in the stands at Kings Meadow, and she said, like, Cuthbert, she's like a terrier. And I remember that quite often because that's like pretty accurate. And of course, you just have to include her. Ella Toon has been massive for Manchester United. Obviously, you already mentioned that, Connor. In Gurureit, and she was everywhere for Chelsea on the left side, left back, left wing back, and then midfield, constant threat. A lot of goals, I think 7 it was, and of course a lot of assists. So that was amazing, an amazing season from her. And yeah, the front three, they speak for themselves. Obviously Beth Mead becoming the top assist provider in the league. And yeah, Semker, 20 goals, outstanding. And same applies for Lauren Hemp.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much all got similar front three, possibly apart from you, Gareth, and we'll get to your team shortly. Gareth, I'll stick with you. What do you make of that? Because there's been a lot of talk of Ashley Neville. I've seen a lot of people, mainly Spurs fans, sort of saying, how's she not in other people's team of the season? How's she not been called up to the Lionesses squad? But I don't know. Are you sold on Neville or?
Yeah, I think she's had a great season. I think she's comfortably been Spurs' best player. And I think that's why it was such a big deal for them to get her a new contract. Was linked with United, obviously, if Owen had decided that she was going to leave. Neville was linked as a replacement. And I know that there was some kind of negative feedback to that, but I would have kind of happily taken Neville as a replacement. I think she's, like I say, a really strong season. I think the biggest surprise in terms of defenders for me this year has just been how easily Greenwood has kind of slotted into that centre half position, particularly at the start of the season when City had all of their injuries and they kind of had that crisis, which kind of opened the door really for a battle for third. She was playing alongside Jill Scott at centre half, and she kind of just commanded that, and she kind of wore the armband, and I think so. She's had a great season. There's kind of no complaints there at all. That front three have, some of it's not surprising. It hasn't surprised me that Hemp and Kerr have had great years. I didn't think that, of looking at all of the attacking talent now at Arsenal, that it would have been Beth Mead making team of the year at the end of the season. Would have expected that to be Miedemar or Heath. But yeah, Beth Mead's kind of stepped up, and now I think this year has the most assists in WSL history. So another great season.
Yeah, Alina, I want to ask you a question on Jessie Fleming. I've put her in my team. You've gone for Erin Cuthbert. Was that a difficult decision? Did Jessie come close to your team? Because I think for me, this has probably been her best season for Chelsea since she signed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Fleming has had a great season. I just remember her scoring against Man United. I think that was her first goal. I'm not quite sure, but since then it was it just went upwards for her, and it was really nice to see her being so confident on the pitch, scoring so much, and helping her team. But Cuthbert has just been relentless. She's been everywhere, and she has so much energy, and she brought so much dynamics to the team. And I think towards the end of the season, Fleming was benched a couple of times, and I think that's why I went for Cuthbert. She's just been massive. She was everywhere, and I just couldn't leave her out.
Connor, your thoughts on that 11?
Yeah, it is very similar to mine, isn't it? I think the only change, I'm just having a look now. So yeah, Bright rather than, who did I put a fullback? Honor. And obviously I put Wright in the fullback as well. Hey, what are you doing here, Matt? Thanks, Matt. Well, I was looking at the team. But yeah, I like I said, I think the front three, as we've all said, I don't think there's going to be any change apart from Gareth because he's went for some funky little rules for himself. But yeah, they speak for themselves. And that midfield, it's more balanced than mine. I think you'd probably say with Wright on the left of the three. But yeah, I agree with what's just been said on Cuthbert. She was one of my players. I made a list, of players that were definitely in. She was in one of the 6 that would just had to be in mine. So yeah, there was no question about that. So yeah, Carter at fullback, maybe. I'm not too sure whether that would work, but I'm sure you'd find a way. But yeah, you wouldn't. That potentially actually could turn into a back 5 because you could put Wright in at fullback and Ashley Neville on the other side and make it a kind of a back 3, back 5. So that could work as well, actually, looking at that.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. I think solid team. Again, I think the main thing that we've sort of all maybe differentiated has been the defenders and the goalkeeper. I think the attacking, sort of the midfield and the forwards, you can't really... There's nobody else you can really pick. Obviously, like I said, I'll put my team up now. I went for Jessie Fleming in mine. I'll let you criticise mine if you want to. There we go. So I've gone slightly different on my formation to what I would normally. I've gone a back four, a midfield three, sort of a 1 and then a 2. Again, just like I said, similar to you lot in terms of obviously the attacking talent. In terms of, the midfield, I just thought Jesse Fleming for me edged it over Cuthbert. And then, the back, I'm surprised that nobody actually went for Katie McCabe. I think she's, for Arsenal, had a quality season. Provided assists, scored a couple of decent goals as well. Obviously went for Mary in goal, regained her England spot. I think, again, this has probably been her best season for us since signing. Greenwood, similar to you, Gareth, agreed that, changing from left back to centre half has been very, very good. And I put Leah Williamson in there as well, just a fraction over Millie Bright. So, go on, Gareth. I'll start with you. I'll let you give me some stick or whatever, or agree.
That team will concede so many goals. Oh, my God. So, obviously, Hemp and Mead will push up as well, which is going to leave Fleming isolated in midfield. Then you get McCabe and Owner pushing up as well. So you're going to end up at some point playing like a 2-1-7 formation. I mean, it's like I say, you're going to score 5-6 goals a game with that. But it's. I love how you just put Mead and Hemp as just orthodox wide players, and not the attacking wide players that they are. I mean, to be fair, you've managed to get 11 players on the pitch this time and not a team of 12. So well done for that.
Thanks. I think with the Hemp and Mead thing, like you said, if I'd have pushed them higher, you've just got Jesse Fleming and that's it. So I was because I was chatting to Connor last night and we were debating, like, can't leave out Miedemar, can't leave out Sam Kerr, can't leave out Hemp and can't leave out Mead. So I was pretty much stuck then trying to fit everybody in. So Alina, have you any thoughts on that?
I was also for my starting 11 considering Katie McCabe. As you said, decent goals. Just remember that long shot, that long range shot against Aston Villa. That was just incredible. I think I chose Bright or Williamson because Williamson obviously was injured in winter and Millie Bright was not injured. She started basically every game and didn't put a wrong foot. But apart from that, decent starting 11. And Fleming in midfield is always nice to see.
Connor, you've got a quick question that you want to ask.
Yeah, I want to try and play devil's advocate somehow, and I don't even know the answer to this, so I don't know why I'm asking it. But if you could pick one player that's, because we've all gone, like I said, the three of us that have gone with just pick your best 11. We've all gone for the Hemp, Mead, and Kerr have obviously made all three of ours. If you had to take one out and put someone else in, where are you going with that? And who is it? Who's closest to breaking that front three apart? I'm struggling to think of somebody to break them off, if I'm being totally honest. So I don't even know the answer, but just intrigued to see what everyone thinks on that one.
Shall I go first on mine? I think I'm going to get flattened for this. I'd take out Tooney and put her in Fleming's position, and I'd put Russo in. I wanted to get Russo in, but I can't. Like, she didn't play the whole season properly. I think she started in October, so I think for me. But then I don't know. I'd say I can't take Tooney out. I'm going to have to swap Fleming. I think take Fleming out and put Russo. If we're doing that, you just killed me with that now. You really have. Go on, I'll pass to you, Gareth. Do you want me to get your team up now?
Yep. Yeah, go on.
And then I'll let you answer the question.
So the question about who breaks the front three. I don't know. Potentially Russo, potentially Shaw, maybe. But it's not an easy one. Okay, so with my team, it's obviously very, very different to everyone else's, but I'll explain why. So I think that often team of the year is generally made up of those teams that finish at the top and doesn't necessarily give a good representation of who has had good seasons and hasn't had good seasons. So I can think that quite often they can be a bit boring. So I wanted to make mine a bit more interesting. And so I set myself a rule where I can only pick one player from each team. So Sam Kerr is in there up front, which means I can use no other Chelsea players in the 11. Just to make it a bit more interesting and give kind of everybody, apart from Reading, some kind of representation. So I'll start at the back. I've gone with Mackenzie Arnold in goal. I think that for West Ham this year, she's had some really, really strong performances, has kind of won them points on her own. And I think kind of outside of the top 4 sides, it'd be so easy to pick either Zinsberger, Berger, Roebuck or Earps for this, even though Roebuck spent most of the season injured. She still kind of has incredible stats for the game she played. I think outside of that band of players, Mackenzie Arnold actually had probably the best season, which is why she's there. With regards to defence, this was a bit more difficult. Ashley Neville and Maz Pacheco, I think, kind of picked themselves. I think Pacheco was unlucky not to be Villa's Player of the Year. I know that there are Villa fans that will agree with that. And Ashley Neville was Spurs Player of the Year, and she had a fantastic season. Picking centre-backs is difficult because obviously of the one player per team. But I think even though they got relegated, Quinn had a really strong season for Birmingham. I'd be very surprised if she kind of plays in the Championship next year, and if she does, she'll be an absolute rock. So she was really strong. And Maya Le Tissier for Brighton had a really good season as well. So I think both of those had strong years and kind of deserved to be in there. Midfield, by this point, I'm trying to, the teams I'm picking from are mid-table. So I'm trying to think like who was kind of able to exercise some kind of control. And I think Pike for Leicester had a really, really strong year in her first year there. I think when we kind of saw them a lot at the start of the season, she was their standout player. I think after making that change in management, a few other players kind of came to the fore. Shannon O'Brien had a really strong season for them. Esme de Graaf at right back had a good year as well, but I think Pike stands out to me there. Shannon also plays further forward, and those positions were locked down already. And Izzy Christensen, I think, is Everton's best player. I think it was kind of between her and Kenza Dali. I think both of them have had times this year where they have run the game for Everton. When Everton have been good, it's because one of those two have been good. We saw Everton against Birmingham at Walton Hall Park, and Dali kind of ran the show there. And when they took her off, they weren't particularly great. But I think Christensen just edges it. Like she contributed 2 goals and has kind of run the Everton midfield. And then we kind of lose any sense of originality and we get to the front where the same players are there. Mead and Hemp kind of out wide. I think Mead is probably stronger out wide than Tooney, so that's why she's there. Tooney, I think, was our best player this year. I think she had the stronger first half and kind of Leslie finished stronger than she did. But, out of the two of them, I think Tooney just edged it. And obviously Sam Kerr up front, which I don't think is ever going to be in doubt. And if I had to pick a substitute from Reading, it would probably be Grace Maloney as to kind of come in and be the substitute goalkeeper. But yeah, something slightly different, self-imposed rules. I just want to specify as well that Pike and Christensen are not playing as number 4s. They're just going to be orthodox central midfielders because I don't like playing 2 holding players.
No, I like it. I like how you've gone a little bit different as well. And sort of, pick one from each team. I'm just looking now. I don't know if anybody else wants to answer this. Is there anybody you potentially swap from? Go on, Connor. I'll start with you, and then I'll ask Alina if there's anybody you'd swap. So if you're picking one from each team, like Gareth has done, is there anybody you'd maybe take out of there and swap for the same club?
Oh god, that really is putting me on the spot. Because the only one I'd take Tooney out and put Honor in, but then you'd have to put a Spurs player in an attacking position. I don't think there's anyone that would go there, so it kind of throws in the current rules. I don't think you're looking at direct swap for swap. I don't think there's any that you could. That backline's actually very strong. To be fair, it probably would get you kind of mid-table-ish, in the WSL. So no, off the top of my head, I can't think of one because, like I said, the only one you're thinking, like I said, I'd like to get Honor in there somewhere, but you can't because, like I said, maybe unless you put. No, there's no Villa player either that would push further up, so I don't think there's anyone I could swap around. I actually quite like that team. To be fair, it wouldn't do too bad in the WSL.
Yeah, Alina, is there anybody that you'd swap in that team?
I can't think of anyone I would swap in my team. But credits to Gareth for that team. It's really nice to see something different. And I talked about it with a friend last week, like who would be our starting 11 if we would just pick one player from each team, and I failed miserably. So that's amazing to see. And Quinn and Letitia obviously are players that don't get enough credit for what they've done in their team's backline. So it's great to see them in a team of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody else in the comments that's watching wants to add anything in terms of their team of the year, if you want to put 11 in there, by all means, go for it. I think what we'll do now is
before we move on, you asking that question implies that there is a swap that you would make.
Yeah.
So what would it be?
My swap is swapping your goalkeeper. I would actually go for Grace Maloney over Arnold. And I know that might sound a little bit maybe controversial. Do you know what? I've not even looked at the stats, but I just think from whenever I've watched Maloney, I've always thought she's been quite capable. And it was actually somebody that before we got Sophie Bagley, I thought, could Grace Maloney make a decent number 2 for Man United? And for me, the answer was yes. She starts regularly for a country. So I think for me, yeah, I just swapped the goalkeeper. Other than that, though, like everybody else has said, it's a decent team for one per club.
Yeah, I mean that's the cop-out answer, isn't it? Everyone else is on the spot thinking, "Oh, how can I make changes to that starting 11? If I take Tooney out, it means I've got to." You've just gone, "Oh, just put a Reading player in there instead."
Well, what other teams did you miss out then?
No, there's just Reading. There's 12 WSL teams. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of somebody in central midfield that could potentially replace Christensen. But
the reason that I went with Arnold in goal is there was one game this season, and off the top of my head, I can't remember which game it was, but she had an absolute blinder, and I'm pretty sure that she basically kept West Ham in it on her own. And yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember which game that was, but it was, she had an absolute blinder. And yeah, that was why.
I mean, the only other option is take Christensen out, and then I think for Reading, it'd have to be Diana Rose. And that'd be the only other potential swap.
It was the City game when they beat City at City. Mackenzie Arnold had an absolute blinder. And that was why she's there over Mackenzie.
Fair enough. In that case, then we'll move on to obviously the German league. Now, there's been a lot of talk recently from many fans of different clubs about transfers and where they want to scout. And I know some of our fans say, at Man United, we should look to Spain, we should look to Scandinavia. Other people are saying France, there's people saying Italy, but there's not a lot saying Germany. So obviously, Georgia Stanway has just moved to Bayern Munich. That's been confirmed today in a 3-year deal. I've seen a few tweets from Bayern fans quite excited by that. I've seen City fans saying it's quite a big loss. Other people surprised that there's quite a few, it appears, to be leaving Man City. So we thought we would get our expert on, Alina, to talk about the German league. So I guess if you want to maybe talk about the league as a whole in general. I mean, I've said to sort of these two, I watch a little bit of the German league outside the WSL. It's the only league I'll watch. I've really enjoyed it. But do you just want to chat to us about the league as a whole and what you like about it?
Yeah, the German league is is a great one. I think, as you said, it often goes unnoticed for no reason. It is very competitive. A lot of people don't think so, but we have great teams. Not all of them are fully professional, sadly, and that shows in the results. Obviously, like the dominating teams are obviously VfL Wolfsburg and Bayern Munich, fully professional teams. That and Wolfsburg just won the league again. Last year it was Bayern, and should I compare it a bit to the WSL or?
Yeah, you can do. In terms of everything, maybe because I know when I watched it, it seems quite physical, probably more so than the WSL. But what do you make of it in terms of like comparing the two and maybe anything that's similar or different?
And that's an interesting point because I remember I think it was Melody Leupolz when she went to Chelsea. She said that the English league is much more physical than the German one. So, but I think both leagues are quite physical. And I think the WSL stands out by being fully professional, that they're behind every women's team is a big men's club, so to speak. And in Germany, there's quite a few teams that are independent, so to speak, that don't have a big club behind them. And like, for example, Turbine Potsdam or SC Sand. And as I said, the fully professional teams dominate the league. So it's most of the time Bayern München or Wolfsburg, and Wolfsburg has had a great season. Obviously, their run in the Champions League was impressive, and German league. I would say in terms of their style of the style of play, it's a very disciplined league, the very disciplined style of play. I mean, that's a stereotype about Germany, obviously being very structured and very disciplined, but that really shows in football. They have a really good structure and their team's a good shape, and they really stay in that shape. And I would say German teams are very organized in their defense. Clean sheets are very important, and the defensive work, not just from the back line and from the goalkeeper, that they have a great interplay. And they have great mentalities in the team. The team spirit is very high. Just think of Bayern Munich in the Champions League when they played PSG and were had a lot of players down with COVID, and that just was a great mentality, a great team effort. I feel like the German league is also very focused on tactics. It's more like they really like a good defensive play, a good build-up play. That's really important. And I talked I talked about that with a friend as well. What we noticed in the German league, in the German teams, it's really important for them. There's one player that's really central, and that's a defensive midfielder. And I don't think that's a very common thing in WSL. And that defensive midfielder in the German teams, they usually have one. And that's a really important player for the team's balance. They dictate the tempo. They are sort of a playmaker. And the WSL playmaker is more of an offensive player, I've noticed, more creative player.
Just before you jump in, Connor, sorry. In the German league, is it common to have sort of two defensive midfielders then? Sort of, because I know a few teams for England have two, or do they tend to use maybe one and then, like you say, sort of be more attacking?
I think one is more common, and then that you have more the central midfielders, the more offensive midfielders as a double pivot up front, right behind the strikers or the front line.
Yeah. Connor?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask what it's like in terms of, because obviously over in England, I think there's a perception. I think it is, but I don't think it's growing as fast as people think. Obviously the attendances and things like that, what it's like over in Germany, because we've seen some of the numbers that Spain are getting, obviously Barcelona in particular, but also Real Madrid and Atletico as well. In France as well, some of the numbers PSG and Lyon are putting up. Is it the same in Germany? Are Bayern and Wolfsburg getting good numbers in stadiums, or and is it growing, or is it kind of reached a level and it's just kind of stagnated over the last few years?
I feel like interest is growing, but not really fast. For the Champions League games, obviously, Bayern Munich played for the first time in the Allianz Arena in Munich, and I think they had 13,000 people there, and that was amazing. That's a club record for the women's team. And Wolfsburg played in the big arena and as well, I think 2 times, and they had a lot of people coming over there as well. But apart from these games, it's a rather small attendance. I mean, I think they hit 1,000. They easily hit 1,000. Attendees per game. But I'd say it's growing, but very slowly. There's not a lot of visibility. Not every game gets televised. They're like all of the games are shown by a private TV channel, and there you need a subscription. So there's nothing. We don't have something like the FA Player where you just can log in for free and watch every game. And that's a lot of fans really miss that, because there's a lot of games that we can't follow. And yeah, that's what I would say about the growth.
Yeah. Gareth, anything for you to add in terms of what we've discussed or a new topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a league that I've particularly seen an awful lot of. I think during lockdown, when it was being kind of shown more on TV over here, kind of dipped in and out of watching it there. But no, it definitely sounds like a league that I want to start paying more attention to. I just think that we kind of do so much with football that we kind of get wrapped up in a WSL bubble. And yeah, I think it's good to break out of that. I think getting out of that this season with the National League has been really good. So yeah, the next step is to kind of break out of it and start looking abroad as well.
Yeah, I want to get this comment up here from James. Talks about being surprised with Werder Bremen scoring 9 goals and still surviving relegation. What do you make of that then, Alina? Because that's quite rare, isn't it, to only score 9 goals but to still stay in the league?
Yeah, obviously. Fight for relegation was a tough one. I think it was decided on the last day, like last Sunday, and it was actually SC Sun that relegated. The other team that relegated, because we have 2 teams relegating, and the WSL it's just 1, I think. And the other team relegating was Jena, and that was clear since a couple of weeks actually. But yeah, Werder Bremen is like that's an interesting example because they are a club. They have a big men's club behind them actually, but they still don't do very well. So it's a matter of like the professional structures there. But I think it's really important for them like to stay up the upcoming season, and for that they extended some contracts for some of the key players, and I think that's really important.
And there's another question here asking Maria Edwards, one of our development players potentially going to the German league. There's quite a lot, I would say, young players that are doing really well in that league. What would you make of it maybe if she was to go there? Similar to Stanway, obviously Maria's 4 years younger, but is there opportunities in the first team, or does it tend to be that they stick more with their own sort of national players in terms of like the German players first coming through the system?
I think there's definitely a chance for every new player coming in and establishing themselves in the starting 11 or like being regular subbed in. Do you already know which team Maria Edwards will potentially join?
I have no idea. Do you know, Connor?
I don't know. I think she's just been linked over there. I don't think there's anything confirmed or anything like that yet.
Yeah, but like you just mentioned Georgia Stanway, that was a really, really exciting day today for Bayern Munich fans. She's a really, really exciting player, very flexible, and that's something that Bayern Munich is really paying attention to having flexible players to also provide something of a squad depth, because that's something they lacked a bit last season. And I think she will learn a lot there, and just she will improve a lot there. I think the German league is really a league where you can develop as a player, where you can really improve and add other aspects to your game, to your style of play.
Yeah, I think what I like about it, and something that Warriors on Twitter tweeted, obviously, we mentioned, and we're talking about the youth, the young players, and if I get up the tweet here, there's been 8 under 17 championships won by Germany. Twice they came 3rd place in the under 17 World Cup. They've won the Euro Championships under 19 6 times. They've won the under 20 World Championships 3 times, the Euros 8 times, and the World Cup twice, with 1 Olympic gold and 3 bronze. So I suppose if we're talking young players and we're talking about sort of transfers, is there anybody that you would maybe recommend to look out for? Because I mean, I'd probably say the top 6 teams for me are, potentially closer. Like I compare it to the WSL and I look at our top 6, and I think there's quite a difference between sort of the top 3 or 4 and then the next two. Whereas I look at sort of the German league, we've got Potsdam obviously came fourth, Hoffenheim as well with some good players there, fifth. Is there anybody that maybe you think is, I don't know, potentially able to come to the WSL as a young player or players to watch out for?
I think a lot of young German players prefer to stay in the league to develop, because the English league obviously has a reputation of being very physical and very demanding, and that's something that the young players want to be prepared very, very well for. So that's what we have a lot of young players in the A national team that are really exciting talents. I really look forward to see them at the Euros, but a lot of them have emphasized that they want to stay in the German league for a while before going abroad. But that's something they really consider. A lot of sporting directors from the German clubs complain a bit about the fact that all the players from Germany or from the other big leagues want to go to England. So that's a really WSL is really attracting for young players.
Do you think that probably helps the national team, though, staying in Germany to develop? Because like you say, obviously, I think technically, I've got the German national team as my favourites for the Euros. I just think they've got a great mix of sort of youth and experience. But do you think that helps in terms of the national side staying in Germany?
Yeah, definitely. We have a great mix, young players, more experienced players. It's funny that you see them as favorites, because personally I don't. I think they have a lot of problems in their back line. That's a bit that's not very stable. But let's see. But I think it definitely benefits the A national team if the players stay there for a while and then go abroad to bigger clubs.
Comment here: is there a German player that could improve the Man United women's first team? I could probably name at least 3 or 4, but I'll let you pick, and then I'll come to sort of your thoughts on transfers, Connor and Gareth.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of players that could improve any team in the English league. But for Man United, it depends on a bit what position it is. What position would you guys say is where do you need a player really urgent?
Go on, Gareth.
Make sure I'm not muted. No, I'm not. Potentially midfield. Potentially like a central midfielder. I would kind of say that's probably the most pressing position. Yeah, there or a central defender.
So a more offensive midfielder or more. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting talents for offensive midfield. Like for example, Clara Bühl at FC Bayern. She just extended her contract there, so no hopes. And Sydney Lohmann, she's at Bayern as well. I think a lot of big clubs have her on her list, have her on their list. She just came back from injury a couple of weeks ago, which was really, really nice to see for the club. And I think she will do very well with the A national team at the Euros.
Connor, is there any picks for positions for you?
Positions, it's strengthening in depth with quality. I think I said this on a show a few weeks ago, that not just buying players to add numbers. It needs to be, I said you improve your first team when your depth gets better just naturally, because let's say we buy 3 new forwards, those forwards that we're currently playing drop to the bench, so our bench is automatically stronger. So that's how I'd be improving our team. So yeah, I guess I couldn't tell you any player from that's German or from that league, because I don't watch it, that would improve us. But yeah, I'd say we need positions all over. I'd say we need another centre. I'd say we actually need 2 centre halves, because we don't know what's happening with Diane. I think we need another midfielder at least. Yeah. Probably need 2 forwards, because we don't know what's happening. Well, there's speculation obviously around a couple of our forwards on the way out. So if that happens, we need 3, because I think we need 2 anyway. I think you just got to look at the other teams in the WSL. I said this a few weeks ago. Look at that Chelsea game, the last game of the season, prime example. Look at the players they can bring on at half time. They're almost taking the mick out of us when we're looking at our bench. And no disrespect to our players, they're not on the level of some of the Chelsea players they can bring off the bench. So, yeah, anyone that can improve the first team first off, I think, because like I said, naturally, then your depth gets better anyway.
Mm. I think it's interesting because there was one player I saw in the 2019 Euros when England played Germany, and one player that tore England apart was Alina Krumbigel. Have I said that right? At Hoffenheim.
Yeah.
Do you think she could be somebody that's potentially targeted by a bigger club, not necessarily Man United, but maybe any club in England. Because I think from whenever I've watched her, she's been really good. And obviously for the national team, she played in central midfield. I know she's played in defence as well, in defensive midfield. But what do you make on her as a player?
Right now, she's actually out with an ACL injury. I think she's in the final stages of her rehab. So we haven't heard from her in a long time. And it was actually, yeah, it was really sad when she got injured, because that was like a bit of the phase when she had her breakthrough at the national team, when she scored a lot of goals and when she was a regular starter for Hoffenheim. But right now she's out, and I think she'll hopefully be back next season. It's a shame that she's missing out on the Euros, because I think she would have probably made it to the squad. But I think when she's fully recovered and gets back to regular playing time, she's definitely someone who will get targeted by bigger clubs.
Yeah. I think there goes my transfer plans. Go on, Connor.
I just got a question just while we've been talking, because I think, Matt, you said this, and I might be stealing one of your questions here, when you talked about how many German players are in the league. And I just had a thought while we've been talking about this in terms of why maybe we're not seeing so many transfers from Germany to the WSL. Because we saw a few years ago there was this big push from Scandinavia over to the UK. Now, obviously, we know that Scandinavian love English football, so that was always going to happen. The Spanish connection's always kind of been there, back and forth in the men's game and the women's. Obviously, the transfers there, but with Germany, we don't really see it. Do you think there's any particular reason for that? Do you think the players maybe just don't like the English style of play? Do you think there's any kind of reason to that, Alina?
I don't know. I think there's I think the signing from Chelsea of Melanie Leupolz, I think that was a statement signing, and I think that made a lot of German players consider going to the WSL. That made a lot of people think about the WSL. I think that her transfer to Chelsea he brought some attention to the WSL in Germany. So I think it might be a bit of a process. I think right now a lot of players right now it doesn't really fit for a lot of players coming to the WSL, but maybe it will fit in a couple of years. I mean, who knows what will change after the Euros. I think there's a lot of transfers happening this summer, so let's see who's coming over.
Yeah. Gareth?
Yeah, so obviously we've spoken about Man United there, but who, if you were going to be signing somebody from the Bundesliga, would you sign for Chelsea?
Oh, I like any player, or someone who's out of contract. Oh God, there's a lot of players I would love to see there. We have great players in the Bundesliga. I think I would definitely go for Lena Oberdorf from Wolfsburg. She's a defensive midfielder, the one that I mentioned previously, the one who really dictates the tempo, the one who really is a bit of a playmaker. And she's quite young, but very, very mature in her play. She's a bit she needs a bit more discipline. She's a bit like Jodie Stanway when it comes to tactics and stuff. But apart from that, she's a great player, and I would love to see her at Chelsea.
Just finally, before I talk a little bit about the TV deal, there's one more player I really like at Potsdam. She's a young forward, Selina Cersei. Have I said that right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's quite a lot of interest in her because she's had another very good season. Scoring goals for fun. They haven't made Champions League though, so that for me could be interesting. Whether she ends up in England potentially. I know Man City are looking for forwards. What do you make of her? Is there a chance maybe she could move, or is it again just a case of maybe developing Germany first for another few years and then push on?
Yeah, with her, it's sadly the same thing as with Pauline Kronwegel. She's up with an ACL injury. She had it this year, and I think it will still take some months before we see her back on the pitch. And it's actually pretty sad because she was leading top goal scorer, and she was surpassed because she couldn't play anymore. But there's a lot of players at Potsdam that are out of contract this summer, so people fear that all of the squad will be gone. So that will be devastating for Potsdam. So I'm not sure if she would make the move this summer because of her injury, or if she will finish rehab and get back a bit to regular playing time and then make the move. But at some point, I'm pretty sure that she will make the move and also will go abroad.
Yeah. Another one to watch out for, one of my favourite young players. I could take quite a few here, but yeah, all mine seem to have ACL, so I think I'm going to move on. Bad luck. I want to get onto the TV deal in the WSL. Obviously, it came in at the start of this season. There was a lot of praise for it in terms of everything that they promised in terms of promotion for the game, in terms of coverage, in terms of analysis. I think as the season's gone on, there's been a few complaints, mainly due to kickoff times and things like that. I don't think there's been any other complaints. Gareth, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to read you a few stats first, and then we'll sort of get thoughts on obviously the first season with the TV deal. But there's been 171% increase in pay-per-view TV. That will be Sky. There's been 14.7 million total viewers, which has been BBC and Sky. There has been 60 million Twitter impressions on Sky Sports WSL page. And there has been, where's the other one? Oh, there's been the news that the National League playoff on Saturday will be on BBC. In addition to this, the Women's Champions League will be streamed for free on ITV as well in England. And I believe it's also been streamed for free in France and Spain. So, I mean, judging by them stats, not all bad. But what have you made in the first season with this TV deal?
I think it's been really good. I think it's easy to kind of have these aspirations, which are great. Could it be better? Yeah, of course it could. But you know, what we don't need to be doing is looking at Sky's coverage of the men's Premier League and compare the two. Because, yeah, it's the first year that it's been done. There's way more eyes on the product now, which is really, really good. And we're seeing attendances, you know, increase and stuff as well inside the stadiums. So I think generally it's been a really positive thing. I think that generally a lot of the pundits are good. You know, it was good to see people like Kelly Smith and Alex Scott. I know Alex works at BBC, but she's still there or thereabouts. You know, it's good to kind of have good, knowledgeable pundits there as well, which is kind of what we wanted. What we don't want are to be kind of bringing pundits over that don't have any real interest or knowledge of the women's game. I think Ian Wright, particularly on social media, has been a really, really positive advocate. He's kind of been out there pushing Arsenal. He was tweeting during the Women's FA Cup final about Lauren Hemp. So that's really, really good. And kind of all of that comes down to, I think if you make things available, people are going to watch it. So I think that's kind of the main thing. BT Sport, whilst it was good, it was one game every couple of weeks, you know, no more than a game a week, really. And there wasn't any real build-up. It kind of started 5 minutes before kickoff, and then that was that. So, yeah, no, I think it's been really good. I think the impressions on Twitter have been good. I think what I've noticed is there's been a lot less nobody cares type comments, which kind of is potentially the easiest thing to spot. So yeah, you know, long may it continue, and I think showing the National League playoff is fantastic. What I would like to see next year is the coverage of the Championship be expanded. Not necessarily that's going to make it onto TV. I don't think it will, but yeah, hopefully the FA player will pick up some more Championship games. But yeah, even though the playoff game is going to be on BBC Sport, so it's going to be online on the app and so on, and not actually on TV, I still think that's a massive, massive positive step. And I think if you look at the past weekend, the Women's FA Cup final was the better game. It was the more interesting game, and you know, better goals. It's nice to see that Chelsea can find the back of the net at Wembley, because the men's team couldn't manage it in 2 hours, 4 hours rather, because they didn't score in the Capital One Cup final either. So yeah, you know, it was on, and it was the better game. So anyone that tuned into that got themselves a treat.
Alina, what have you made of it then? Because obviously you were talking about Germany before, and obviously here we have things like the FA player as well. What do you think that has maybe brought to the game as a whole, if we're looking sort of at getting more people watching women's football?
Yeah, the growth of women's football in Europe this season has been amazing. I think the most important impulse really came from England, came from WSL. There's a lot of people in Germany that, and also players that say, "Oh God, I wish we had something like the FA player there," because there's a lot of league games that we can't watch in Germany because they are televised by a private company, and only a couple of games, like from the big teams, Bayern Munich against Wolfsburg, those are televised on public television. But sometimes at really bad kickoff times. I think we had that issue in the WSL as well. But the TV deal in England, it's been outstanding. It's really been the first, like not the first step, but one step that, and many important other steps followed from that. So it's really been like it really showed us into the right direction, I'd say.
Yeah. Connor, two questions for you. First one is, what did you make of it? And the second one is, going into next season, would there be anything you would change about the TV deal?
Oh, crikey.
Just take it one at a time then.
I think the thing is, you were never going to see like a gargantuan, overhaul of women's football this season just because Sky and BBC were more involved. You were never going to see that this season. But it's the best way I think of describing it. It's almost added to the foundations of what the FA player obviously currently had. Obviously, as you know, I obviously was following women's football before, but not as heavily this season, obviously with United. So I only really know this. But speaking to people like around me that don't follow it, that don't follow football at all, they're like, oh, I saw, the FA Cup final, or, I saw that was after. Oh, I saw, I played Chelsea on the last day. And these are people in my family that don't follow football at all. So the fact that they're even aware of it shows the reach that it's having. And going into next season, I don't think they need to change too much. They just need to keep it kind of the way it's. There's a few things they could change, like Gareth said there, the championship. I think more eyes on that. But the thing is, I don't think they're ever going to do that until the WSL holds its own, until the money really starts flooding into that. So yeah, I don't think there's too much they can change going into next season. I don't know how long. Is it a 2-year deal or was it 3? I can't remember how long it was. The Sky one I'm talking about here. So yeah, I think it was 2 or 3. Either way, so yeah, it's a good starting block. The numbers speak for themselves, particularly in the derbies, this season, and even on the last game of the season. I think I joked about it, but it worked. Sky would have loved that last game of the season. United, Chelsea, Arsenal were, Arsenal, Chelsea for the title, United, City for the top 3. All we needed was a relegation battle, and Sky, would have had everything that they wanted. So, yeah, it's a really good start this season. Like I said, I think that's the takeaway. The fact that people are seeing it that don't even follow football, and like I said, not everyone's going to twig on. If you don't like football, full stop, you're not going to like, you're not going to go and get involved. But the fact people are seeing it, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you mentioned the championship, and obviously, I think for me, if it's obviously like you say, you want to get the WSL out there, but I don't see why they can't put all the championship on the FA player as a minimum. And I remember we did a show probably about a year ago, and we talked about, could games not be streamed on Facebook, on YouTube, if they can't go on the FA player. And I think for me, I look at Burnley in the 3rd tier, and all of their games are on TikTok. Now, if you don't like TikTok, fair enough, but you've got a chance there to watch a side that's in the 3rd tier. And, it's helped them massively. And obviously they've got aims to go professional. So I think for me, at least getting championship games in the FA player, potentially as well, looking at those kickoffs that are early, especially 11:30, because I think for me, it's great that they're on telly, but if you've got, like, we had to go to Reading, I think, for 11:30, a 11:30 kickoff from Manchester, you've got a 4-hour drive. Yeah, it's not practical. As I think if that was like a Reading versus West Ham and the two teams are local, then it's practical. I think the other thing for me is a clash with the men's games. We've really got to stop doing that. I know there's been issues where cups have clashed, things like that. Gareth, have you any more to add or any thoughts on anything that I've mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the clashing with the men's side is pretty criminal. I think we need to be better when it comes to that. There's just no excuse for it, really, is there? What you don't want is for fans to have to make a choice between one side or another. That's what we don't want. I mean, the Sunday is there because it typically shouldn't clash with the men's side. So it's just things like the women's FA Cup final being at the same time as a massive game for City in their men's. The men could essentially have gone and got one hand on the trophy at the same time as the women could be winning one. So you're asking fans to make a decision, and that shouldn't be happening. Granted that the FA Cup final probably shouldn't have been the one to move, but yeah, there should be something done there. The WSL should liaise with the Premier League, and there should be an understanding drawn up between them.
Yeah. Alina, is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish?
I absolutely agree with you, Gareth, that it's just important. That's just really annoying when the women's game clashes with the men's game, because that takes a bit of the energy out of the growth that the women's game is currently experiencing. And I think we had the same issues in Germany, that men's games were clashing with the women's games. We also had that last Sunday, and that's just, it doesn't help the game growing. And it only grows with the help from also the big clubs if they push towards getting more people into the stadiums. And so that's not really benefiting it. And also not with the early kickoff times. That's not it.
Yeah. That's one thing we didn't mention, that advertising. I think when we had our game at Old Trafford, that was something that the club really pushed. And I think with the correct advertising, obviously the TV deal is great, like you say, but I think if we're then sort of going backwards and we're clashing with men's games, you're kind of undoing all the work you've just spent promoting it and getting it out there to a bigger audience. That's it then for tonight. I want to thank you, Alina, for joining us. It's been really great to have you on. Thank you as well to Connor and Gareth, as always. Thanks to everyone who's watched and everybody in the comments. John's back on Thursday. He's got a Mark Skinner special. His love for Skinner continues throughout the summer, so I'm sorry to put you all through that. 7 o'clock, so make sure you tune in with that one, and we will see you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks.